Okay, so we're gonna try to keep this organic and just try to get some flow to it. Shoot in a couple different scenes, possibly from different things that I've been up to lately. If that kind of thing interests you, this is Mail Call. This is an opportunity for me to have kind of a more in-depth conversation with some of you in regard to the comments and posts and questions that you put on the various videos on my channel. Some of them are really tough ones. So I got something in my mouth. Most of them have to do, a lot of the questions have to do with the Tikka CTR that I recently used in the Cabin Fever Challenge. This rifle right here. Okay, this is a Tikka CTR. It does have the removable screw cap on here for your different devices and so on. I was thinking about putting this on here. This is the Pro Comp muzzle brake by Surefire. Think about putting that on there to try it, but honestly, you don't need it. You just don't need it. Shoots great without it. I will say though that shooting in that powdery snow, you can sure see the shock wave in the snow coming off that muzzle. If you really study the footage of me lying down in the prone position, you can really see that muzzle blast coming out. Not the muzzle blast, you don't see any fire per se, which surprises me considering it's only a 20-inch barrel. I expect to see some fire. But the pressure wave coming off the muzzle certainly was blowing snow around, which is a little bit of a distraction. Well, it was interesting. I was just having a conversation here with on the Facebook group here. Where are you? Oh, B. Frew. And you mentioned something which I think is kind of interesting here. Darn tootin', nice shooting Tex. That's the way to manipulate your bolt. Is there any other way? Pretty slick, brother. You have undoubtedly tapped into your Zen mastery here. I'm a little bit embarrassed. I'll admit I'm a very modest person, and I have to admit I'm getting a lot of really positive feedback from that shoot. But what I can tell you is that I had to challenge this. This was my third attempt. And the first 2 times didn't work out very good. But each and every time I was, in the head. It wasn't anything particularly physical that I was doing. It was the mental game that I was not succeeding at. I needed to find I was operating outside of the bubble, if you know what I mean. And I needed to get that bubble together so that I was totally focused on what I was doing. And here's some targets. I mean, this is not bad. This is target number 1. Can't even see if you can see that or not, but I mean, it's not bad. There's a whole bunch of bullet holes there. I don't know. I haven't counted them, but the time wasn't great. Time wasn't great, and plus I had a little bit of difficulty so far as here you can see kind of a pattern that's a little bit of vertical stringing. It's not really centered well on the target, so I did make a side adjustment after shooting this one. Again, this is the standing, kneeling, prone, sitting. Right, so I wanted to move that grip over. I think there's a fair amount of consistency, but this was I think this is the winning, or my submission target. Right, so I mean, these are the last one. I really wanted to push the time at 100 meters. I mean, I really wanted to push time, because the lower your denominator is in the formula, which helps to tabulate your score, the higher your score will ultimately be. So if I was just able to maintain kind of the same accuracy but really push the speed, then I think that's kind of what will make or break if you want to be in the standing. You got to be able to push outside of your comfort zone. I purposefully made an effort to go faster than I thought was necessary, and it worked out pretty good. I mean, if you can keep your seconds down, that's definitely a good one. Beefer also asks, do you offer a cabin fever challenge that's accessible to physically challenged shooters? And so I recommended you contact me on the Facebook group and kind of run your idea past me. I'd like to know more about what you're thinking about, and I'll give you some feedback, and we'll go back and forth. I personally think that the Cabin Fever Challenge is accessible to people with disabilities. There was one guy that came out, and his back was rats. I mean, his back was multiple surgeries, fusions, and he couldn't. There's certain positions that he was having difficulty with, and so we made some adjustments, because even though the movements were easier by normal standards, they were still significantly difficult for him. So we made arrangements for him, and it worked out really well. Dennis LeBlanc thinks I need to do my math again. Oh, no, sorry, no. My math is correct. Talking about my scores. So lots of comments here on the Cabin Fever Challenge. There's one here on culling wolves. This is a video I made some time ago. It's a tough subject. Elia P says, maybe best to do is being done, reduce moose and other antler hunt tags down to 0 if this is the case, and control wolf hunt with tag allocation rather than outright open season to kill all. That's a tough one. I mean, we have moose populations in British Columbia that are on the decline. Not dramatically so, but moose populations have been in steadily growing, right? And so this is the longest time, 2017, 2018, the longest time that we've seen populations start to decrease. And so those are trends that are a little bit alarming. Additionally, caribou herds are pretty much walking the knife edge of extinction. You know, it's interesting, back in the 1800s in British Columbia, the only animals we had here, I'm talking about large mammals, were caribou and bears, and I think that's pretty interesting, don't you? There were no moose in BC in the 1800s. And then mankind started having, manipulating the environment, clear-cut logging, and making the environments for moose to flourish. They migrated into northern BC, and I mean, a really, like a huge one was the Barrow clear-cut. Those are 2 big giant blocks that you could see from orbit. They're huge, but they're so full of moose back in the day. But today, it's the caribou herds have been declining since 1939. So moose habitat, which is what you see within fringes of forested area to open areas, they like to be within 150 meters of those fringe areas. That's where you'll see lots of the moose scat, is within 150 meters of fringe, forest fringe, on these clear-cut areas. Caribou don't like that. Caribou like to be up in open areas. They like to be able to have access to high elevation stands where you have epiphytes and so on, and goat's beard, bryophytes. It's a huge winter sustenance for them, because they get the snowpack is so high they can get up to the crowns of these trees that have goat's beard and all that different stuff. So they like open habitat areas, but unfortunately they can't exist in the same kind of habitat as moose do, and these wolf populations have gone up as a result of the increased moose herds, moose populations, and unfortunately the caribou herds have been directly impacted. That's slowly, consistently over time, ever since 1939 here in BC. It's just consistently been this downward spiral. Now by going out and shooting wolves, that is a stopgap measure. It is not the, I should say, we're putting a band-aid on a symptom by shooting wolves. But right now it's a stopgap measure to stop things like caribou herds from going extinct. Right? So we have to intervene, we have to interject, and unfortunately there's just too many, there's an imbalance as it applies to wolves and these herds. Really, ultimately what we need to do is fix the habitat problem. And until we do, the caribou herds will continue to be in decline. Now the moose are in decline. There's different reasons for that. It's got to do with tannins and foliage in the midsummer, and protein availability and shade. There's a lack of shade in the interior forest of BC now because of the mountain pine beetle logging. It's just the truth of the matter, right? It's just the situation. So, you know, I think in many ways you're probably right as it applies to the wolf call. I mean, these are contract crews. All I was basically saying is that hunters have a stewardship obligation as well. That was the message of that video. So I'm sorry to go on about it, but I wanted to make sure I answered your question and your statement. I think you're right, but I think there's a bit more to it than that. Okay. Rifle chair. What did you get the scope mount for your Enfield? That actually came with the rifle. Did not come with a scope, but it came with a Reproduction side mount bracket. I don't know where it came from. I would like to know myself. Because frankly, I mean, I would love, if it would be possible, if there's any CNC manufacturers out there, I would love to work with you to manufacture a side bracket for these old girls, these old rifles, that is in 30 millimeter. Suddenly there's a whole world of optical solutions available for that rifle that make a lot of sense. So I would love to have a number 4 Mark 1T Lee Enfield sniper side bracket that is in 30 millimeter tube. That'd be great. Maybe MDT. Come on. You guys are great. Okay, India's Jungle Fighter. By the way, it's been about 4 months since I did one of these mail calls, and I'm using the Logitech camera here instead of my other camera, just to keep it simple. So these are supposed to be quarterly, and I haven't got to it. So it's been 4 months. So the India's Jungle Fighter video. On that note about wood, I have a LONGBRANCH number 4, which I love, the New Zealand Army issue, but possibly never feel that it is in excellent condition. It is interesting that New Zealand was fielding LONGBRANCH if the Australians were manufacturing. Mine seems to have the same deep walnut stock as seen on most LONGBRANCH Lee Enfields. Climate-wise, I know that a lot of the ways the New Zealand climate is a lot similar to Canada than it is to Australia. Australia is one of the driest continents on Earth, but New Zealand can get very damp. And though not as cold as Canada, unlike Australia, we actually have winters. I know part of Canada can get pretty damp too, so I was wondering how well the LONGBRANCH Lees stand up in damp conditions. I doubt that was the reason New Zealand forces were issued LONGBRANCH instead of Australian rifles, Lithgow, by the way. It is interesting now that I think about it, you seem to know a fair bit about the history behind this rifle, and maybe wonder if you know why this might have been the case. You know, I think, honestly, when I came to New Zealand, getting a whole schwack load of LONGBRANCH number 4 Mark 1 rifles, it probably just came down to price. You know, ultimately, whether it's a Lithgow or a LONGBRANCH from Toronto, Canada, it probably just ultimately came down to price per unit. And so I don't know that. I'm just using my common sense. However, I think you're right. I think that the walnut that we use in LONGBRANCH, it wasn't just walnut, it was also maple, and we used some birch stalks that we acquired from Savage. However, most of those rifles are stocked in black walnut. Beautiful wood, beautiful, just stable and rugged and robust. And you're right, it is more suitable to working in the climate of New Zealand than probably coachwood on the Lithgow SMLEs that you're referring to. But I doubt that was probably the case. I can tell you from my experiences that black walnut on the LONGBRANCH rifles in coastally influenced areas of British Columbia, it's been awesome. But you got to make sure you keep treating that wood, because just by holding it, rub contacts, marks on the rifle, saturated wood stocks they don't last. They lose their zero. They're privy to cracking and damage. So you have to constantly, when you see these areas getting washed out of oil, you have to supplement and reconstitute that oil back into the stock. It's just the way it is. It doesn't matter if it's coachwood from a Lithgow or whether it's black walnut on a LONGBRANCH. You just have to do it that way. it stabilizes the wood. Here's a comment on the Remington 673, the misguided guide gun. There's a few people that video is upset. However, I just got to be honest when I'm making these videos. It's just how I feel about the rifle, and based on certain criteria, and I try to identify that criteria as why there are probably some much better guide gun options out there. I'm not particularly fond of bolt actions for guide guns. I actually prefer pumps and lever guns. Like, I think a lot of the African safari kind of concept rifle has been brought into North America, and we kind of label them as guide guns. However, when I've got an 800-pound grizzly bear charging at me, honestly, I want a fast system. That's going to be a lever gun, or it's going to be a pump. Probably 12-gauge shotgun, or in my case, a Marlin 1895 and 4570. I'm running that 400 grain bullet. I think I have one here somewhere. Where did I put it? There it is. So this bad boy right here, that's a 400 grain hard cast bullet, and it's running at around 1800 feet per second. Got a nice load. It's a low pressure load, and it's punishing to shoot, but it'll stop that 800-pound grizzly bear that's charging at me. So far as the Remington 673 is concerned, you're right. It was supposed to be chambered in 350 Remington Magnum, and it's essentially not. No, the ballistics are not too dissimilar to a pumped-up 35 Wellen belted Magnum. The 350 Remington Mag is a belted Magnum, as I recall. However, I just can't run them fast enough. And I don't think that rib along the top of the rifles helps really necessarily in the accuracy department. Barrel harmonics, I believe, are affected by that. Now, some other people out there are having nothing but success with their rifles, and that's great. I just didn't have that experience. However, I do agree with you that a carbine variant, such as like the Remington 7600, awesome, and 35 Wellen, that's a rifle I would love to own and play with and get to know a bit better. Comment on the Parachord AR-15 trigger job. I've had some really negative feedback on that video, but I'd say probably 80% of it, 85% of it is really positive from people who said, wow, this really worked. Motor City Madman says there are basically two triggers, one for hunting, one for combat. The mil-spec trigger is a combat trigger designed for fighting and designed to fight shooting. It will clean itself up after 1,000 rounds, and if you're in combat, that will happen pretty fast. Well, so essentially what I'm doing is inducing wear on the trigger system of that AR-15 in order to do exactly that, which is just to smooth it out. I know it's not going to be a match grade trigger, but it's going to help. I mean, where you need accuracy and precision, a slightly smoother, crisper pull, you're not going to get any benefit so far as strength or the break strength of the trigger. It'll just be a smoother transition. Mine was really gritty, and it made a huge difference. That process, you know. I know you're not going to be getting. I'm not going to sit there and shoot 1,000 rounds of ammunition to do something that I can do with a piece of paracord. A piece of paracord is cheap. 1,000 rounds of ammunition is expensive. But essentially, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to achieve the same thing. Comment here from Chris Crocker. This is on the preliminary view of the video I did on the 5.56 NATO cases that have been swaged down into a 303 bullet, 3.115 inches. That beautiful bullet right there. Got some decent loads out of it. I'll be doing the penetration tests with it when I've got some thawed out conditions. Like today it's -15. Plus there's also about a 20-mile-an-hour wind, so it's a little bit chilly out there. So I'll probably be using some water-soaked log firewood rounds that are pretty much pulp logs. So they pretty much have nothing but a pulpy center. and you set them in water for a week. It's kind of like having a whole bunch of telephone books that have been sitting in water strapped together. So I'm going to use firewood rounds for this penetration test. It's worked well for me in the past with gas bullets doing weight retention evaluations. So I'm going to try that with this. But his comment is another great Lee Enfield video made. I'm currently setting up a standard No. 4 Mark II for deer stalking in the United Kingdom at distances between 75 and 150 meters. Note all my changes are non-permanent, so I can revert to the original rifle if required. Perfect. I bought a new long stock and a reproduction cheek riser. I have a 1907 sling. Those are great slings. I have been recommended the Fulton Armory non-drill scope mount. Question, please, can you offer some advice on a suitable scope? I am looking for a Schmidt & Bender 4x42 Hungarian. Any thoughts? Yeah, not so much worried about what scope you put on it, but more worried about the non-gunsmithing scope mount you intend to use. When I first got involved in Lee Enfield's, I of course wanted to scope them, so I used a number of non-gunsmithing scope mounting options where they're essentially just friction fits to hold those mounts on, and I don't like any of them. I tried 3 or 4 different types: ATI, B square. I forget what the other two are called. It was a long time ago, but or is it S&K, not ATI? Maybe it was ATI, S&K, and B square, but none of them worked well for me, especially for the No. 4. They're set too far back on the receiver, so you have to have your scope. It's going to be way too. You definitely run a long buttstock because your scope's probably going to be fitted way back on the rifle. If you want to get that nice, relaxed, eye relief on that scope. It's hard to do when it's set so far back, but it doesn't really particularly matter what scope you use. But if you're going to use a friction kind of bind, non-gunsmithing scope mount, I'd urge you to maybe just, instead of spending money on all of this different stuff, go out and get yourself a Lee Enfield that's already been drilled and tapped. It's just a better scope mounting system. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Lots of Lee Enfield stuff. One here from Flying Beaver, and it has to do with develop and maintaining musketry skills video that I did. Jeez, it's 2014, and it really struck a nerve with him. I mean, a whole bunch of these videos are just kind of raw, brain dumps turned into a digital format. So I don't know how much thought I had put behind this particular video, but anyway, so a lot of this stuff about maintaining drills and skills is 2 questions. If at some time you have the opportunity to comment on them, the first is about these maple leaf up shoulder patches I've been seeing you wearing in some recent videos. Are you going to be making these available for those of us who are rifle chair fans? I just think it's weird to have fans. I don't believe it. It can't be possible. It was never the purpose. But no, I don't. That's the short answer. That was a gift from a channel viewer, a subscriber. I love it. See, the Maple Leaf Up logo isn't mine. I mean, that's the Maple Leaf Up was basically when the Canadian Army was fighting in Europe during World War II. In order for Canadian supplies to find its way to the Canadian Army, they had to follow the Maple Leaf Highway, and they would have signs that showed if you're heading in the right direction, you'll see a sign Maple Leaf Up, right? And when you're leaving the front, you're following the Maple Leaf down. It's kind of like going on a logging road. You're calling your stations up, 23 up or something like that. And when you're coming down in kilometers, you're calling up, 23 down, for example. your kilometer markers. Same kind of idea, maple leaf up, maple leaf down. And so my catchphrase is maple leaf up, but honestly it's a World War II. It's historically relevant to Canada during World War II. It's the artery that kept the grain machine running forward, right? Resupply. So there are other, you know, maple leaf up patches out there somewhere, but it's not me. I'm celebrating maple leaf up. I'm trying to merge the two maybe a little bit, just because I like the way it sounds. Second question is about the stock on the Savage Model 10 in the 2015 review of a Citron 4 to 14 by 40. I still use that scope, by the way. It's on the Enfield Enforcer. I acquired an unfired Savage Model 10 TR in 308 as the basis for a long-range rifle. That's a very good choice. My new club has a 700 meter range. Oh, you lucky bugger. So now there's room for some low development as well as improving long-range marksmanship. In the video, your Savage Model 10 has a gray-white digital camo synthetic stock, and I'm wondering if this is a commercially made available stock or a very good paint job. So that's actually a Savage stock, and it's got some kind of like an what do they call it? Accu pad, or it looks like kind of a CAD pad, but it's like the Accu pattern, I think. But yeah, I think that's a dipped stock, and it came from Savage just like that. So it's not an aftermarket stock. So thank you for your question, and thank you for the kind words, because I could tell that they came from a real spot. So there's let's see here. Sorry guys, I'm trying to find this next question. Some of these I can't talk about. It's funny. All right, so you know, there's a shooting featherweight rifles. I owe Winchester an apology. I actually don't. No, since I made that video, I just don't like it. I don't like that video I made. Truth of the matter is that I did have to do something. There was something more that I needed to do to make that rifle shoot better. You know, it's a featherweight rifle and 243 Winchester. I think that the twist in that barrel had a lot to do with the reason why the groups were not shooting well with a 100 grain bullet. I think it needs a faster twist. I don't know why they make 243 with such a slow twist. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. But the question is, the new Winchester sure make a beautiful rifle, but I certainly wouldn't be happy with those groups. And there's a reason for those mediocre groups. The reason you're getting flyers and changes in group size when you grip the barrel and forearm tightly is because those particular loads are not leaving the barrel on accuracy node. Therein lies the problem with factory ammo. You can't tune in to the guns. You're going to have to tune that gun to the ammo. If you want to improve grouping, try torquing the action screws down super tight and see if there's any improvement. If it was my rifle, it would get a proper bedding job. Thanks so much for your videos. Really enjoy them. Good luck. Thanks, John. John Coop. Yeah, so I do hand load for my rifles. However, if it can't shoot factory ammunition within, say, 2.5, 3 inches, then I'm not interested. Like, for example, the Remington 700 LTR that I acquired in 2018 has been shipped off to get work done on it. It's a brand new rifle, and I'm getting 3 minutes of angle out of it with some ammunition types. Yeah, sure, I could hand load to the rifle. However, when I expect more. Factory ammunition isn't that bad. Okay, it's got a lot to do with the rifle. I may not be in a situation where I can effectively hand load for a rifle. For one reason or another, your ammunition goes that way, your rifle goes that way, and no, your ammunition isn't available to you for one reason or another. You have to supplement, complement from third-party sources, and that's factory ammunition. And if it doesn't shoot factory ammunition worth a darn, it's not a rifle worth owning. I'm sorry, but that's how I look at it. It has to shoot both good. Sure, I mean, if it shoots factory ammunition well, that's great. I know that I'll be able to tune that in even more. But I want that rifle to shoot well with factory ammunition too. But I totally understand what you're saying. That I sold that rifle at a loss. I was honest with my description of the rifle. It was still of interest for somebody, and they purchased it. And so they're happy and I'm happy, even though I'm at a loss. And again, with the Remington 700, I'm going to be at a significant loss. I paid $1,300 for that rifle. Now I've restocked it in an MDT LSS, shipped it off to a buddy who's going to tune it up, who knows his stuff. He's a national champion. He's a marksman of high prestige. And when he says he'll fix something for you, you send it to him, right? Because he knows what he's doing. And I trust people like that. Okay, we'll answer this one here. It's the last one. Obsolete rifles video. Geez, that was a long time ago. I made that one. Back in the day, people would buy these obsolete military surplus rifles because they were economical and got the job done. They were practical, emphasis on the were. These days, it's about preference. If you want a practical, economical rifle or handgun, then there are a lot of great modern options. You're not outgunned if you're running an AR-15 against someone with an Enfield. And right now, you can get a reliable, accurate polymer guns for less than the price of these older guns. If you are budget restricted and want to go hunting, I recommend new polymer bolt actions. If you're a collector or enjoy owning historic guns with quality metal and wood craftsmanship that are willing to pay a little more, then military surplus guns are for you. Now that the prices for mil-surps have gone way up, it doesn't make sense to buy them purely for function compared to newer guns. So here's where I think I mostly agree with most of what you said. Ghostus Coyote. It's a neat call sign. Ghostus Coyote. I think that I agree with most of what you're saying there. However, where I diverge from you is when it comes to ruggedness and reliability. I mean, Lee Enfield magazines can hold 10 rounds. There's not too many rifles. I mean, other than, for example, the Tikka T3 here, where a 10-round magazine is even available to you. Especially like a double stack magazine that works. The Tikka CTR. This is a great magazine. Tikka CTR magazines are great. They are very expensive, but they are worth it. It's a double stack magazine, unlike the Accu-Camo International magazines, which I don't like. I mean, I do like them, but I don't like the fact that they're that far down below the bottom of your rifle. They do work, but they are very cumbersome and in the way, in my opinion. Lee Enfield could do it. Why can't modern manufacturers make something similar? A high quality magazine, I don't care if I have to pay more money for it. I just want it to be rugged and reliable. I don't think budget plastic rifles offer that. I think probably they're improving. However, where along the price scale do you need to be before it's no longer considered to be a budget rifle? It used to be that if you're going to buy a rifle, you had to save up 2 weeks of wages. That's what it would cost for you to get a rifle. And now you can go and buy yourself a rifle after maybe 1 or 2 days of wages. And if that suits you, fine, then that's good. You can have your budget rifles. But I think anyway, my point is that where we diverge is that mil-spec, how should we say, ruggedness was made to go to war, and they are rugged, tough, and I like that in a rifle. And those plastic guns, they don't. But if price point is definitely your limiting factor, you have no other choice. You have to buy that budget plastic rifle. And however, I would rather spend the same amount of money on an older rifle that is in good shape. A lot of these, for example, Model 98 Mauser, Husqvarnas, and 308, 30-06, they're 10 times the rifle as a cheap plastic polymer stocked push feed. You're getting an older rifle, mind you, wood and steel, for the same price. However, it's much, I should say, resolute. Anyway, so that's where we diverge, and I think I agree with most of what you're saying. Anyway, guys, this is a real quick mail call number 3. Hope you guys are doing great. We had a quick call yesterday. The Cabin Fever Challenge 2019 team got together for the first time. Kind of discussed roles and responsibilities, how we're going to work together as a team, how we're going to monitor videos that are coming in, how we're going to collect the scores, how we're going to communicate, all these things that you're going to need to establish before your team can be effective. Well, we had that finally yesterday. There's going to be a wave of submissions coming in very shortly. I know there is, and so we want to make sure that we're ready for it, so that when that wall of submissions and entries hits us, we're going to be effective, and we're going to be able to get an awards or ceremonial video out in a decent period of time, so you guys aren't left waiting. And wanted to recognize all of you is definitely is not just going to necessarily be the first top 3 scores for each division that are going to be mentioned in this video. We're going to recognize people that have gone over and above and beyond. For example, somebody shooting a 375 H&H Magnum. That would be incredible. Very punishing, but if somebody were to actually do that for Division 3 with a bolt action rifle, I would want to recognize somebody like that, just going through punishing recoil. And I actually haven't seen anybody do that yet, but if they did, I'd recognize them for it. Anyway, folks, hope you guys are all doing great. Cheers, and as always, Maple Leaf up.